Consistent self-improvement, everybody. You are now listening to American gypC Podcast. I am your host, Classic, and I'm here with my co-host,
gypC. And today we have Matt Gardiner. He is a recovery coach, life coach, and sound therapist with a passion for helping people rediscover who they truly are. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the nice intro. And yeah, great to see you. Great to meet you guys.
It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So it's like a northern city in Canada. I'm not sure for anybody that's somewhat familiar with like Canadian geography. It's a couple hours north of Calgary. So Calgary is fairly close to the border. I would assume a lot of people know more or less where that is. And Alberta is the province right beside British Columbia. And British Columbia has like Vancouver as the coastline. So Western Canada, definitely north though. I was talking with gypC earlier about she's familiar with Winnipeg. So very similar to Winnipeg as far as like the climate. It's kind of a blue collar city similar to Winnipeg. There's a lot of similarities. So, we're kind of just getting out of winter. Honestly, it wasn't too bad, but we did have the usual minus 30 stretch around Christmas time, and we just had it about a week ago. So now I'm let's bring on the spring.
Is it a small town or big town?
You know what? It's a little over 1 million people now. So I want to say it was like 1.4 million. So pretty good sized city. I'm actually from a very similar city, like northern city. It's in British Columbia though. It's Prince George, and that place was 70,000 people. So that's where I was born and raised. Good place to be raised. It was not so much now. I guess it's like the crime capital of Canada. It had been for a while. A lot of gang activity up there, which was not the case when I was there, which was lucky because it's been a while now. I've been in Edmonton for about 20 years. And so Prince George, a lot of like forested area. So I spent a lot of time out in nature. Like my backyard was literally, I'd hop my fence and it was right on the river valley. So I spent a lot of time in nature. So that was nice. But when you grow up in a place of 70,000 people, like as soon as I could get out of there, I did. Right. So by the time I was 18 years old, I'm like, go to a bit bigger city center rather. Just like more things to do. The simple math, there's more people, better schools, more jobs, that kind of thing. So, so we ended up moving out to Edmonton, and I've been here pretty much my entire adult life. So I've been here, and I've enjoyed it. My older brother ended up moving to Vancouver, which is just a beautiful. It's kind of like the LA of Canada, I guess. So, where they do a lot of filming there, and there's just a lot of entertainment and music and. So I kind of regret not going there in one sense, but it's so expensive there. I'm sure you guys can relate. You're probably finding that down in LA, I'm assuming. Yeah. So kind of similar that way. There's like, it's awesome. You're living in a world-class city, but you're also paying to live in a world-class city. So whereas in Edmonton, we have our own house, myself and my lovely fiance, Darcy, we've owned a house for the past 10 years, which there's no way we'd be able to own a house in Vancouver. Right. So, you weigh the pros and cons. So we've been enjoying it out here though, for sure.
Gotcha.
So were you always doing life coaching, or how long have you been doing that? And how did you get into it?
Yeah, for sure. So, what, I'm very new with it, and I'll give a little bit of origin as to how I got into it. So I'm in my rookie year of life coaching, actually. But if I felt that I've been doing the coaching and mentoring part for a lot of my life. So I was working the same job for 23 years. I got hired at a regional like a Western Canadian grocery store. It was started as Overweighty, ended up as Save on Foods. And I got hired when I was 16 years old in Prince George, and ended up working until like I just turned 40 last summer. And so I've been like from part-time closing kid, punk kid, to assistant store manager and all the jobs in between. So the one thing that I really liked, especially over the last like 5 or 6 years, was being able to kind of coach and mentor like the new crop of teachers that were coming up. It meant a lot to me to be able to utilize all my life experience and skills and everything, and be able to kind of, I've been through a lot, right? After 20 years of anything, you can speak to it, right? So I was finding myself enjoying that quite a bit. So I didn't really realize how much that side of it was going to make a difference later on. So fast forward to last summer, I was starting to find the assistant store manager job, a little bit unfulfilling And so I ended up taking a sabbatical. I took 6 months off and just kind of did my own thing. I took 6 months off, and I remember a couple days into my leave of absence, I just went out to, it was springtime, so early April. And I went out to just like a campsite that's kind of in and around Edmonton. I just walked around the forest for like a couple hours and just had this huge creative like outpouring of ideas. And luckily I had my phone with me, and I was just kind of like riffing on my phone. Okay, I'll do this. And I've never thought of this before. And it just came out of me. And so I was like, okay, there's something to this. Like I was essentially just following my intuition at that point. And I'm just like, it was that feeling, that there's something more to life, right? And I think a lot of people can get that at a certain age, like they call it midlife crisis or, existential crisis. I don't know if it was a crisis per se, but it was definitely this like feeling that I had inside of me that like, there's something more. There's something more that I need or want to do. So I was just following that. And, about a month and a half into the leave of absence, I went on this one guy's podcast, and it was like, I was going to be the guest on the podcast. And we ended up just talking for 3.5 hours straight. Like as soon as we're just like one of those people you just click with, right? And we're just chatting about everything about life. And, by this time I was developing this online course just on creativity and the importance of creativity and how it's good for your mental and physical well-being and so forth. And he was like, okay, well, if you need something to kind of like help, with your credentials, I know this one guy, Mark England, who does like a really good coaching certification. I'm like, sure, like why not? I was kind of open to whatever at this point. And so I got on the call with Mark within about 24 hours of that call with Mike. And Mark was just, I'd highly recommend looking this guy up. He's just phenomenal, like such a great presentation, a great speaker. He did a TED Talk some years ago now. And he was I'm just like, man, I got to be a part of this. So I signed up right then and there. And that was my first coaching certification, was Enlifted. So the Enlifted style is all about language, like the language that we use in our inner dialogue. So, and as a result, then the language that we use with other people. So specifically, I'll give some examples, like using soft talk. So that, like if we're saying, like, I even have them posted in my office, so I always remind myself of this because I was really bad at soft talk. Like when you say like guess or maybe, or I hope to do this, or I should do this, or could, those types of words that are very non-committal and ambiguous. Removing those, just plucking them one word at a time out of your verbiage, and just getting a little more solid, especially with your the way that you're talking to yourself. Like the difference between saying I should go to the gym or I can go to the gym. They have a completely different energy, right? Yeah. So it was a lot about like the words that you use and the specific style of coaching called the 4-step story work coaching. So you work off a Google Doc, or if you're in person, you can work off a piece of paper. And it's getting your client to get some stories that have been, trolling them or haunting them for years out on paper. Because a lot of times you have these narratives in our head and we haven't really articulated it. Or if we have, it's just been these outbursts of problematic, again, using these problematic like words basically, right? So as soon as you can get some objectivity by getting it out on the paper, and then you read it back to yourself, then you can start identifying, and you have this awareness over how you're actually talking to yourself and how you're coming across to other people. And you can really see like the cognitive shift with people where they're just like, oh, wow. Like, it's one thing to kind of say it in your own head, but as soon as you put it on paper and then read it to somebody, like, if I'm beside you or like through the computer screen and we're like reading it together, man, it has a profound impact on you're like, I can't believe I actually talk to myself like that. It's pretty bad. It's kind of like the comparison, like you treat your friends one way, but you never treat yourself the same way, right? You can give your friend a great piece of advice, but you can never take it yourself, right? It seems to be. So it's kind of like that idea. It's like, as soon as you read it back. And the other thing that the big key part of this is proper breathing. Because a lot of people, when you get into that stress response, you start having that chest breathing or you freeze. For me, if I get stressed out, they always talk about fight or flight. The third F is freeze. So that's what I do when I have too much stuff on the go. I got something on the computer, my phone's ringing. I hold my breath. And that wasn't something I was aware of until pretty recently. I'd say in the last 8 months, I'm like, man, that's just not good for you, right? So just keeping that abdomen breathing going, and then that gets you down, it calms you down in that parasympathetic state where you can be more creative. You have that space to actually respond, as opposed to just reactionary words that just come out of your mouth. Like you're giving yourself that space and clarity, right? So that's what it's all about. It's changing your better words, better breathing equals a better life. So I bought in hard on this coaching style. I ended up doing level 2 certification for Enlifted. And what's near and dear to me is the recovery coaching as well. Thanks for mentioning that in the intro. Because I had gone through my own problems with alcohol for pretty much my entire adult life, and happy to say I'm coming up on 3 years alcohol free here in about 35 days or so. Yeah, thank you. So that was a big one for me. That's near and dear to me. So I want to be able to be there for somebody that is in that stage where they're a little bit uncertain, because I know it's very touch and go when you're first getting out of anything like that. When you're talking about like a long-term relationship, addictions of any kind, those types of things, you're finding yourself again in a lot of ways. So that's how I view recovery coaching. It's not just recovering from an addiction or addictive behavior. I mean, that's a big part of it, but it's also recovering your identity that's been either misplaced or lost along the way. Because in a codependent relationship, your identity is so intertwined with that other person that you remove it from that, like you don't know what to do with yourself, right? So just helping folks that are in that sort of transitional stage in their life where they're finding out who they are again, and really helping them basically have that rebirth, that get to that stage in the hero's journey where it's like they have that rebirth again and feel great about themselves. So yeah, that's I guess the lengthy story as to how I got into life coaching, and I've been doing it for the last year or so, and very much enjoy it. This is definitely my calling. I actually just quit my job. I had 23 years at Save On Foods. I quit pretty much a month ago to the day. It was on the 28th of January. So I'm on day 29 of the rest of my life.
Wow.
And it's been great. It's been great. This feels like this is my calling, right? And it's took a little while to get there, obviously, and that's totally completely fine. And I definitely feel this is what I'm placed here to do. So it's great, because like the whole 23 years prior to this seems like a lead up. It wasn't like I was completely lost or anything. Everything I've been done up till this point, I've been able to use, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Okay. I don't know if we asked this or not, but when did you get into podcasting?
Oh yeah, no, you hadn't. You know what? I got into it in 2015. But I should say, the last year or so, I've been really serious about it, as far as, because before it was sort of just a fun thing. I'd interview my friends and, have a little basically like a road diary of my band. And so it was more like a personal thing, just to kind of get comfortable with it more than anything. So, but the last year or so, I've been doing like what you and I, or like what the three of us have been doing with like Matchmaker and Guestio and things like that, and actually getting, guests that are, people that I didn't know beforehand. Whereas the last 6 years before that, it was just having fun with friends, basically, right? So just the last year or so, it's definitely taken a turn for the more professional or serious, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned creativity earlier, the importance of creativity, and I don't think I've ever I know if someone is creative, they get encouraged to express their creativity, but I don't know if I've ever heard someone say that creativity is important. So can you speak to that a little bit? Like, why is it important?
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's great. So I always had this feeling that, because I always remember how I feel. Like I'm sure you can relate to it, gypC, when you have a nice day, when you're just feeling creative, you're developing a website or doing some graphic art, and you're just nailing it. You're in flow. There's no real feeling like it, right? You get the hair on my arm stand up. I love it. So even for you being a musician, like the inception of a song where you have a great idea and you see it come together, there's truly nothing like it, right? Like the idea of creativity is so, I think, overlooked. So let's get into this a little bit. I always found that people when they get into sports, for example, or even like, I'll use the analogy or the comparison with reading. If somebody is, a little bit not as skilled with reading, we don't go, oh, you're not a reader. Like, you put away those books. Whereas with anything artistic, generally that happens a fair bit. Like, if somebody writes a song and they bring it to like their dad and read out, and the dad's like, oh, you're not a songwriter. And then they never try again. Right. Or they have this painting and like their brother makes fun of it or something, and then they never paint again. And yet with like sports, it's like, you're bad at basketball. You're not like, oh, you're not a basketball player. Stop it. They're like, okay, well, let's put you through basketball camp. We'll get you the good shoes. Like, don't worry. Like, we'll support you on this. But like artistic endeavors are not like that generally. I mean, obviously there's some people that like force their kids through piano and, and that kind of thing. Right. But generally speaking, with art, it's like one and done. As soon as you have that crippling comment from like a teacher or a parent, you're no singer. And then you never try singing again, or you maybe hide it when you're like in the shower where nobody can hear you. So it's too bad, because like us as humans are just like, we're naturally creative. And I think it's an overlooked aspect of health and wellness. Like, people always talk about nutrition and exercise, and that's great. Don't get me wrong, for sure. But I think that some kind of creative act should be in there as well. It goes so hand in hand. And if you look at the parallels between, what happens to your body and your brain, as far as like the chemicals that get released in your brain when you're participating with like playing a musical instrument or painting or doing anything creative, writing, any of that, it's very similar to the effects that you get from working out. And they've done a lot of studies on, this is an interesting study. I kind of wish I had it in front of me, but in the UK right now, they've been doing these like long-term studies on like babies from the time they were born until, I think it's like about a 40-year study at this point. And they've been testing all these different things to kind of see basically what helps prevent like pain and like ailments like later on in your life. And of course, like mild workouts once a week has decreased the you getting like a painful, like some arthritis or something like that later on in your life. And that's like once a week. Whereas with like cultural engagement or artistic engagement, just even once a month has had the exact same effect as like the mild workout once a week. So pretty crazy. I'll send you guys the link. I forget exactly what it's called off the top of my head. I kind of wish I had it in front of me, but yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And it has a lot of like mental benefits. And they're even saying in like some of the old folks' homes, they're seeing a lot of benefits to people with Alzheimer's, as far as like becoming more lucid. Like songs can kind of get through to them and make them remember certain parts of their certain stages of their life that they had otherwise forgotten. Painting is great for people that have arthritis, because it's just like a little bit of a mild rotational exercise for their joints. And so there's all these crazy things that sort of get overlooked with artistic endeavors and just creativity in general, that I'm trying to bring to the forefront, as far as like, oh, it's great. And like, both of you guys being artists, I'm sure you can relate to the feeling of accomplishment and just the overall feel. Like, it feels like it's good for your soul, right? Like, music is good for your soul. Creation is good for your soul. So that's what I've always I'm like, why is this kind of, so far below, working out and nutrition on a health and wellness regiment, where it should be? To me, it's like, it's hand in hand. I mean, I work out every day. I stretch every day. I try and eat as best I can, and I play music every day. Right. It's just, for me, it just goes hand in hand. So yeah, interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. To go back a little bit on, I guess, splitting from your job. So you were already doing podcasting during your job. Is that what made you a little bit more comfortable with go ahead and cutting loose after so long?
Okay, so like, just to confirm that, like, so the fact that I had my podcast going on, did that sort of help me make the decision? Is that,
did it give you a little bit of confidence to say, I at least have something else, whether it's making money or not, I at least have, or is it, did it help after so long, after commitment of 20 years and,
Yeah, for sure. It definitely did. And that's a very good question. Nobody's actually asked me that before.
Because a lot of times people, you know, they quit the job first and then they start podcasting or start doing something else, you know.
Yeah. No, for sure. It definitely helps. So, you know, the one thing with podcasting that I love about it is it's a really good way to network, right? Because like now, like I'll know you guys. I know you guys on a fairly personal level, right? And like, you know, it's just like that. Like everybody that I've come into contact with, it's been a great connection, right? It's been like, okay, I totally, you know, there's something in common. There's a reason that we're talking. There's a reason that you guys are doing podcasting similar to why I'm doing it. So it's cool. You get to meet like-minded people.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Which I love, man. I love it. So absolutely. Yeah, no, it definitely helped. Yeah, that's cool, dude. I've never actually thought of it like that, but for sure, it definitely did. It gave me there was that confidence and that sort of that bridge from what I was doing before to what I'm currently doing. And just the way that you can network and still, you still feel like you're making traction, right? So absolutely. Yeah. To answer your question, for sure.
Okay.
How long you been doing music and what kind of music?
Oh yeah. Again, another great question. Thanks. So I've been doing music started playing guitar when I was 14. I started singing when I was 16, although I wouldn't really call it singing. It was, I didn't have the right technique. So I was doing I was trying to be exactly. Kind of yell singing. And it's definitely developing. I finally learned how to sing properly. I'd say like early 20s. I took some, I got one of those like DVD sets that kind of show you the how-to. And I just remember one day I was watching this guy. I think the visual helped, but instead of just like hearing it, I was watching the guy sing, and you could kind of see what he was doing with his, like the mechanics of his throat and everything. And I'm like, So I started kind of like imitating what he was doing. And then all of a sudden I had this like, okay, I could kind of figure out how to get in a head voice without slamming my, you know, getting all tense in here. And then after that, I was like, okay, I get it now. And then from there, it was just a matter of being able to kind of control it. And so, but as far as again, it's developing, man. It's doing the reps. It's like anything else. There's no shortcuts to it. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that are more naturally gifted than I am.
It's a muscle, you know, so you have to, you know, strengthen it like in everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. No, exactly. So that's kind of what it was. As far as like music, so I grew up in the 90s, right? So I was big into like Pearl Jam and the grunge scene and classic rock. My dad was always into, you know, like Led Zeppelin, and I really enjoy Neil Young. I think he might be my favorite artist. So I've always liked somebody like Neil Young, or like even Madonna. I got a lot of respect for her. Somebody that can kind of reinvent themselves quite a bit over and have this broad scope of different genres that they can drop into and do very effectively. Even a guy like Beck. So I've always appreciated that. At the end of the day, I'm a rock guy, like alternative rock for sure. But having said that, I mean, now that I've gotten into sound therapy, I'm very much into like just the meditation music. I just love it now all of a sudden, right? It's you know, just having those nice calm, like, you know, synthesizer kind of stuff in the background with some, you know, the pink noise and the nature sounds. That's when I have a, you know, a day to do stuff on the computer, or if I got to study or whatever, that is 100% what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of meditating. Just especially in the last week or so, I've committed to an hour a day, whereas before I was doing like little 10-minute pockets here and there. Which is 10 minutes is better than nothing. Don't get me wrong, but getting into that like hour a day. So I just have that nice frequency, like the chakra healing frequencies and such. I just love that stuff. So, and then to me, it's like, dude, I like looking back on some of the stuff that I listened to. It was so angry. And I mean, I was angry. I was an angry teenager, right? Like my parents were divorced. And I think just there's some like you know, when you're growing up, there's this like that little bit of unplaced emotion. Like you don't really know how to, you know, the first time you have a breakup, it's just like the end of the world, right? There's all these things that you kind of have to grow out of. So I was definitely learning life. Exactly. So definitely. So I mean, I'm looking back on a lot of this music I used to listen to. It's so dark and angry, and it's just not where I am anymore. So now my music is reflecting that. I've been using a lot of myself and my fiance Darcy, been together for 15 years, but we had a 2-year period where we were broken up. So I use a lot of I love singing about relationships, like the relationship specifically with her is kind of my muse. I have like a fictional sort of filter I put over it, just so it's not too personal. But there's like, you know, the underlying theme is definitely our story. because it's easy to speak to and it resonates with me. And it's cool, like using, like, I can kind of tell Darcy, like, this album is about us. So it's kind of like, you know, behind the scenes, it's personal for us. And, but at the same token, you can present it to somebody and it's kind of like, it's a fictional story. Right. So yeah, so
that's genuine.
That's, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. You don't want to, it's got to come from somewhere inside. Right. So yeah, for sure.
And it helps to where, even, you know, believe it or not, it still helps to that it's still more, you know, personal, a little genuine than you kind of living off somebody else's energy and creating your music off somebody else's energy.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, for sure. Just to flip it on you, how is it for you for your songwriting? Like, what is your sort of inspiration, or does it sort of depend? Or
it's been a long trek for me dealing with, I guess, music. I grew up playing cello in the orchestra. So I started when I was about 5, and then I got into creating instrumental music when I was in performing arts school around 6th grade. And I didn't really get into knowing what a producer is until around college, where I was pre-vet for biology pre-vet major.
Wow.
And I ended up, and I was on an orchestra scholarship, but I'd already had a little taste of creating, and I had a cousin that was a rapper in my hometown. That is, he passed my freshman year of college.
Oh, wow.
And my brother and I still took up, you know, lyrical music, and I was always producing, and I got a little bit more into producing my sophomore year. And from there, you know, kind of when I was in Mississippi, did the little record, wanted to have a kind of little record label type of thing. But I was more of the main producer. So I developed from producing, got better at producing, got better with songwriting, and then kind of developed myself. You know, in Mississippi, there wasn't a lot of people teaching too much creativity in the system, and we didn't have a lot of famous, you know, we had David Banner at the time for hip hop, but we didn't really have a lot of, you know, influences coming out of Mississippi to really, you know, reach around or reach to other artists like other places like Los Angeles or Atlanta or, you know, some other hubs. But
totally,
you know, I kind of developed myself. Same thing, got into, you know, always had a pitch since I grew up playing cello. Developed my vocals a little bit more after I started producing, you know, and you know, always wrote my own songs. But it's been a weird process. Like, I stopped playing cello for about 7 years, and I was still producing when I was in Atlanta. And then the songwriting process, I could go off, you know, it could be pretty random. I could write something, you know, off the top of the head about something else, or I could write something about my personal life. It all depends. But from different music relationships and just kind of the whole circle of where the industry is going. That's why I'm kind of taking a break now. And even looking at, I've been a musician most of my life. So when I got that taste of silence about a year ago, it felt kind of good. Because even when I stopped playing the cello, I was still producing. So there was still that produce the song, write the song, record the song. That's been a hamster wheel a lot of my life. I'm 38.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So when I got, you know, a chance to turn that off, and that's kind of where the podcasting creativity built at the same time, because it was just more like, all right, just take everything off and just, you know, see where I'm at and see what goes. But to go back to the songwriting thing, I could, usually for me, like I said, I can produce my own stuff. So I could sit there and start 1 or 2 melodies. And if I hear a, you know, melody without finishing the, you know, the rest of the track, I could start a hook from there and then go from there. Or it's pretty, you know, pretty random, my process.
That's cool. Yeah, I always loved hearing about the creative process. That's neat. It sounds like, you know, you have a quite the body of work. So it's just like, for you, it's
I've tried a lot of
hits.
I've tried a lot of different methods. So, you know, I can say even right now, like I said, I haven't created in a long time. Yeah, I haven't.
It'll be interesting.
Or over a year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when you do get the desire to do it again. Like
Yeah, it
how much
flows
has been
pretty good.
stored up inside you, you know, like how is, are you going to have like 30 songs come out of you? It'll be interesting to see, eh?
Well, even, visualizing a return to the process, I have a lot of stuff that's already recorded, that I just
Oh,
haven't
okay.
put out
Okay.
to a certain degree. So it's a lot of instrumental. We've released the instrumental for the podcast before. So it's American Gypsy
Oh,
soundtrack.
cool.
Yeah. And it's
Cool.
just
Cool.
instrumental tracks that I produce on the Native Instruments machine.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So,
Yeah.
I first started producing on the Yamaha motif.
Okay.
So I
Yes.
have
Yeah.
lots and lots
Yeah.
of tracks that's just, stored up and
Just ready,
there.
eh? Just ready to
That's
go
there. Yeah.
whenever.
So
Yeah. On
hopefully,
demand.
you
That's
know,
cool.
visualizing the perfect moment to where I can just get back and maybe sit down with a mixing engineer and just kind of go through
Yeah.
some songs one by one. But I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to
Yeah.
doing the soundtracks at the least on the music
Cool.
side. Yeah, just at least, working on some soundtracks because we take the songs and we, put them on YouTube, and we also have a YouTube channel. So we go to
Oh,
the beach
cool.
and travel, things like that. So we put those songs on the videos. So
Oh,
we
wicked.
we
That's so
all yeah,
cool.
all our YouTube videos have original music.
So, and gypC, do you play some instruments as well? Do you do some
No,
instrumentation or
She
I don't
plays
play
the
any music.
developer, the
no?
software
Oh,
developer.
okay.
I
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
play
great.
the
Like
Yeah.
the other
keyboard, the
keyboard.
other
Yeah, she
keyboard.
plays. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I tried to play piano when I was little, and did that for a couple of months. And I know I played clarinet when I was in middle school, but that was the extent of my music
Okay.
experience. But I am a lover of music. I listen to a lot of different music, and I support his music. So
Yeah. So whenever I was doing
Yeah.
music, she was tied along to it as well. So
yeah,
even when building
Cool.
up to it, the pandemic happened, and it I was actually street performing when the pandemic happened here on
No
on
way.
my cello, yeah,
Wow.
in downtown LA. And
That's
I did
crazy, man.
pretty good versus,
Yeah,
the
I'll
average
bet.
street performer. But it kind of opened my eyes up to, the industry is never going to be the same. And she was already kind of into vlogging and podcasting a little bit. And we added on to the recording studio, the 4 mic podcast setup, because, I feel like if I'm going to do it, I like to have a little quality with it as well, or at least, nice
Sure.
quality, and
Yeah.
we can enjoy it. If not as a business, but
Absolutely.
still just personally, it's still something we can enjoy.
Totally.
And it just, I saw the whole industry change, and it kind of opened me up to where, I just want to separate the musician title for a second as well,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
kind of start over and do something else. During 2020, I had a chance to, to reflect. And like some musicians like yourself, like, how did you get into music?
You know what? Okay, funny story. Well, it definitely came out of my parents' divorce. I needed something. It was either I was going to go into a martial art or I was going to go into music. My mom kind of gave me the option, and a friend of mine, one of my best friends, lived down the street. He just got an electric guitar, and I had no idea that an electric guitar with some distortion on a 10-watt amp could produce what it did. I'd always just
Yeah.
heard acoustic. I didn't realize that for a couple $100 you could get an electric guitar with a distorted amp. And he was doing all this like crazy AC/DC stuff. He was a violin player, so he could already do all these guitar solos. And I was just like, what? Like, how are you actually? That's crazy. So that was, as soon as I saw him do that, I remember I was just laughing because it was like, I blew my mind that one of my best friends could just get an electric guitar and play it like that. So I'm like, I want to do that. So that is basically how I got into it. And then a couple of my buddies at high school, the one guy played drums and my other best friend played guitar. So we went down into my unfinished basement of the house I grew up in and just made probably some just awful noise that we thought was music, right? Like you say, developing, right? So
Right.
that's how you find your way. And that's how, after that, it was, I find that collaboration is the key. Like if I was left to myself just to play music, I don't know if I'd be as much, at least as much, maybe not at all. but the juice for me is sharing ideas with other people. I got good quickly because I was playing with a drummer versus if I was just playing in my living room.
Right.
I got way sharper, way quicker. I got the instincts. I understood kind of like where, how to mix yourself and that sort of thing very quickly because I was playing with other people. So that, that was a big part for me. And then the singing, I was plugging my my vocals into my guitar amp and just yell singing because I needed to try and be louder than my guitar amp. And so that's where my improper, singing started, because that's the only way you can be heard is just doing this like, the screechy stuff. But yeah, that was my origins in it. Was just I remember my buddy just blew me away.
So for me, I was offered either violin or cello at the age of 5. And
interesting.
Here we are. So it wasn't the same, oh, I heard this and I like this and I'm gonna go into it, it wasn't the same thing. So when the pandemic happened, I got a chance to kind of reflect on that to see how did I really get into music, and still, like I said, still being grateful for a lot of things, that I've learned and that has come with it. But I had to ask myself then, this thing that I'm pushing, because it definitely turned into a hamster wheel, from,
okay. That's interesting.
I know I'm hoping I'm going somewhere, or it's getting me somewhere. And then, like I said, when the whole industry, when things are moving and the whole world turns off. So now it's like, okay, let me go back to the drawing board and look at some things, or let me really look at why I'm in this building and see if I need to be over in the other building.
Sure.
So
interesting.
That's kind of how I got to more solid into the podcast world. And like I said, with it allowing me to remove the musician relationship from a lot of the people that I meet, now it's more genuine. Like I said, you don't necessarily look at me like a musician. You look where it's a conversation, genuine human being, human to human. And
totally,
I'm learning. That's really one of the things I'm here to learn from a lot of people. You taught us a lot about Canada from in the first few minutes.
Sure.
Right. So,
exactly.
That's kind of one of the things that led me out of the music world into, just another world in general for a little bit. And I always know, and because of my life period, I mentioned it yesterday. I started when I was about 5. I played for 10 years, and I'm playing in the orchestra with people that started when they was about 40, and then they play for 10 years and they're 50, so I always knew that, okay, I could always take a break and come back to it. I already have the foundation. They didn't get the foundation until they were 40. So it's not like you're never too late to start learning how to play an instrument.
Fair enough.
So I kind of knew, all right, I can take a break, at a certain time. But a lot of the times, even, when I took the break from playing the cello, I didn't know how to improvise on the cello. So when I came back to it 7 years later, I matured mentally, and then I connect some dots, connected the instrument, and I wasn't in love with classical music like that growing up. So I didn't really practice like I wanted to. I didn't love the music. I wasn't able to really love what I was doing.
Makes sense.
So it was a lot that I, to kind of look at. Like I said, still grateful for it. It is what made me who I am today. I'm good at music. However, like I said, I'll get back to it. I'll definitely make it back to being creative, but I don't know if I can't say that I'm as passionate as a musician as a lot of other musicians out there, even though I do have a lot of time into music.
Yeah. Okay. But that makes sense.
I'm definitely more passionate probably about podcasting and talking to people now than I am about recording a music or sitting down to even create a song or to think about a song to write. What am I going to write the song about? Because, a lot of that comes with a certain type of energy. So
of course. Yeah.
That's one of the biggest, difference in the world is that the podcast world versus, the music world, but still creative in both.
There's still a lot
Completely.
involved with the music world, though. That's the other thing too. With podcasts, it's like you can do a podcast and you can release it, but with music, I feel like, well, I guess both you have to do the same. You still do promotion and different things like that, but I don't know.
It's still
it's a lot
it's a
harder
brand
with the
new
music.
it's a brand new game. It's a
Mm-hmm.
new world. You can, there's no set rules with it right
Yeah.
off either.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, good
if the
point.
world turns off today, podcasting is still here.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, yeah.
And
Future proof in that sense.
I guess that was some of the things, yeah.
Yeah. Was it a tough decision for you or was it time? Like, it sounds like you've had this in the back of your head as far as like taking a step away from music. So was that something that just naturally happened? You're just like, okay, this is the signal that I've needed.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say, because if things wouldn't have stopped then,
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's what I mean. Yeah.
I think I probably would have had to keep on rolling with stuff.
Interesting. Yeah.
At least for a little bit, but the universe and
yeah,
it was really divine how everything has mixed up over the past few years, even from how
just
a lot
crazy,
of things
man.
happen. Even just from, like I said, the raining on the roof and taking a break and coming back to the drawing board. And
right.
Even it's weird that you even mentioned like your previous podcast was more of fun with friends, and it seemed like season 1 compared to now with our podcast, that was kind of the warm up with season 1.
Okay. Yeah.
With like
Okay.
a
I can
warm
see
up,
that.
and then now this season has been just strictly, or just been really kind of autopilot on, with Matchmaker, different types of people that we don't know or have never, because I think we didn't have Matchmaker before. So Matchmaker is one of the first platform, or one of the first podcast platforms that we're using. I think she's tried some others as well. But
any luck with those?
No, and I don't think I put any time into it really. It was season 1, and we had some guests that we already were bringing to the table, and I guess I didn't really. I think it's all timing, and I didn't really put any energy into it. But when I signed up for a Matchmaker, it was just right away started going. So
like I said, it seemed quite divine.
Yeah.
To where like the whole season or the whole year 2021 is like back to the drawing board, and then we just started back up as if the podcast had been promoting the whole year.
And it's a nice feeling. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been really good guests. Like you said, you've been having, really good success with most of the guests that you've talked to. And it's been basically the same way with us.
I would say like 100%. I haven't had a single guest where I'm like, I could have done without that. Every single one has been stimulating, good, natural conversation, and somebody that I would reach out to again in the future and go, hey, do you want to do another interview? Every single one of them, which is super cool, right? Because I remember we talked about before we got started, like, you're in a position that you're wanting to have genuine conversation. You're not going to go on a podcast if you're like an introverted person that, you have one word answers. Like you're there for a reason. You're there to meet somebody, have a network, like have a genuine conversation with people about, real subjects. And like, it's cool. Like we've already bounced around a lot of different subjects, the three of us tonight. Right. And that, to me, that's awesome, man. That just gives me energy. Like I just love it. So it's great that you guys are having the same kind of success and you're finding it the same way as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to the sound therapy because I've only recently heard about that, like in the last year, about sound bath and different things. I've attended like meditation sessions where they play the Tibetan bowl. How do you do? I know you also do music. So when you do your sound therapy, is it on like the bowls, or are you creating in your studio? How does that work?
So yeah, good question. I have a set of those bowls on order, so I can start learning how to do it. For now, I've been using samples, and I basically have a hybrid of my own instrumentation with some royalty-free samples that I've been creating. And it's easy enough to get a lot of these, like, are you guys familiar with like the 7 different chakras and the different frequencies that are associated with each one? So
I'm not I don't know about the frequency associated with those chakras.
It's pretty fascinating. I'd highly recommend you guys look it up. It's really cool. So for example, like the root chakra, if it's 396 hertz, so if you have like just the frequency, like it's like the whole tone, it'd just be like, ooh. So you have that as your bed track, and then you use a little bit of pink noise or something like that, which gets rid of any kind of like noise pollution around your area. And this pink noise is basically like every frequency. It kind of sounds like the static you'd hear if you turned on the TV, and it's just like almost sounds like a little bit like rainfall. Right. So I use those 2 things, the whole tone, some pink noise, and nature sounds. Because there's so much like, so many different surveys and different things about people. Just really, I think it's just a part of like genetic memory, they call it, right? That we're just so used to and really tune into like nature, sounds of nature. So I put a little bit of that symbolically in the background. That's the bed that I sort of base everything upon. And so, for example, like the root chakra would be in the key of C, and then it goes D and all the way up to B, right? So you start with like C major, and then you just do some instrumentation over top of the pink noise, the nature sounds, and you can get a little bit like the binaural beats where it has like the goes like back and forth from left to right, and plug that in just a little bit subliminally in the background. So like, you'd notice it if I hit mute, but you don't really notice it just by itself, if that makes sense. Just sort of like really like layered in the background. And it's that's basically how I create it. And it's really cool. So when I'm working with clients, it's a little bit like people would say, the derogatory term, like woo woo, but like I believe in it. I believe in this kind of stuff, right? So it's kind of funny because you ask, what kind of personality they are. Then you ask, okay, you kind of do some questionnaire as far as like, you figure out which chakra center is sort of out of alignment for them. And then you can sort of base the piece of music that you create for them off of the energy that might be a little bit out of alignment for them. So it's fun. They kind of give you the framework out of the questionnaire they get back to you. And then you ask them, what's your favorite like animal? And to get like some nature or animal sounds in the background. Do you like storms? Do you like the sound of the ocean? So you can really customize it to somebody's tastes that way. So it's really fascinating, and I quite enjoy it. And so far, I've been getting some good feedback from my clients. So
nice.
It's definitely not woo woo, because the universe
I'm glad.
is frequency, vibration, and
when I used to drive Uber, I listened to this. It was an audio book. I think it was like Music in the Brain on Audible or something like that.
Oh,
and
cool.
It talks about a lot of the frequencies and studies that have been done with music on animals and different things like that.
There's a guy who used sound, high frequency sound, to remove cancer from the body. He figured out there's pretty high frequency. I think it was in the 100,000s. But he figured out how to remove cancer from the body. And actually, I was just watching, before we got started, I was watching this video. It just popped up on my feed about like 40 hertz sound and how that is shown to like improve memory recall and a lot of different things in people that you didn't realize.
That's right. 40 hertz, and I think it's good for headaches. There's a few different things that I want to say, even dementia as well. Yeah, you're right. 40 hertz. And I think it's 528 hertz is like, it's great for, there's tons of other things. That's for the heart chakra. And it's great for like, they say it's like DNA repair and all this stuff. It's crazy though. Like if you really got into it, like even DNA is like vibratory, like everything about us is vibratory. So the other thing I'd recommend for you guys and for the listeners is if anybody's ever looked up, it's going to be interesting for you because concert pitch generally, especially in North America, has always been 440. Like the A is at 440, right?
Yeah.
But if you move it up to even to 444, there's videos where they have like a tuning rod where it's at 440 and they put the tuning rod into water and the water is all just like kind of like looks all chaotic, right? And even if you just go up to 444, which is what I tune all my instruments to now after I watched this video, and they put the tuning rod back in the water and it just makes these like perfect ripples. And it's crazy. Just that difference of 4 hertz and its effect on water is crazy. Also the 432. So if you go down basically a half step and tune to 432, it's the same kind of thing. It has the same effect on water. So they're saying that like 440 is sort of not the most desirable frequency, right? So 444, I've been tuning everything to that. And yeah, I would highly recommend you guys watch some videos, because if they A/B it, they'll have a 440, you'll hear it, and then it just has that little perk up to 444. And like, it's amazing what it does to your body. And you're like, holy crap, there's definitely something to it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I looked into that a little bit because I saw a
Have you?
documentary about like how the tuning standard changed. I forgot what
Yeah.
date it was, but
Sure.
you know, there was a whatever association of some music like got together and decided, you know, they're going to tune at, I thought it was 441, but it might have been 440.
Yeah.
And but how that before that they were using a different frequency, I think 432 or something like that, or
Yeah.
and it was better. I mean, that's technically, I think, the resonance of Earth, or you know, like I think, anyways, they showed that it does make a difference, and they shifted it at some point, and some people have created an app to where even with music distribution platforms like Spotify and things like that, there are apps now that will let you listen to whatever music you're listening to at the 432 hertz frequency
Really?
instead,
I gotta look
because
this up.
it's shown to like feel different. And as an industry,
Yeah.
like they've been tuning to the wrong, well, to the
Certain
wrong
frequencies that
frequency,
disturb you.
basically,
Yeah.
Right.
which
Disturbing
is not
frequencies.
conducive to the human body. And there are apps
Totally.
now that help you, you know, tune everything so you can
Wow.
get a better result.
Thanks for letting me know that. I'm gonna look that up like right away. That's fascinating stuff though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really, it's very interesting. Yeah, I love that stuff. I'm glad that you said, you're like, it's not woo woo. It really isn't.
No.
It's so funny that we're like, our science, you know, our science brains that need to explain everything almost dismiss that side of it. But that's science too. Like, we're, you know, at the end of the day, we are vibratory beings. Everything in the universe is vibratory. So why do we dismiss it as, that's just, you know what I mean? Dismiss it as it's like this woo-woo stuff, and it really isn't. It's just as much science as anything else, in my opinion, anyways.
I mean, even in physics, you cover sound. It is a science.
Exactly.
Like,
right?
Yeah.
It's so funny though, because like my brother is definitely he's like the science brain, right? So anytime I bring up like chakras or frequencies, he's just like, nah, I don't want to hear about this. I'm like, come on, man. Like, there's science behind it, but I think it's just the fact there's like some spirituality kind of, you know, partnered with it. I maybe that's the part that turns them off. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
It's starting to connect though, those two worlds.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. I totally agree, which is great to see. Yeah, for sure. It's funny to think like a lot of the great thinkers from back in the day, like Leonardo da Vinci, was very much like the whole brain, right? You had the science, you had the art, and like the marriage of the two. Yeah. And then somewhere along the line, we got very science oriented. And to your point, absolutely. I think it's coming full circle to the point where, you know, they can very much coexist again, you know?
Yeah.
I recently read this article about like what Einstein's belief is about love. And I guess it's some letters he wrote to his granddaughter, and he told her, you know, release this to the world long after I'm gone, like decades, because they won't be ready for it until then. And it was like his whole spiel of what he thinks love is and how it's misunderstood, and we still haven't. It's one of the greatest force in the world, and how we don't understand it. So he told her, you know, to wait a couple of decades to where society would be more ready to receive the information.
That's super cool. I got to look this up too, man. Anything with Einstein, like he's got some of the best quotes.
Yeah.
And again, same thing. Like he was he played violin, didn't he? Wasn't he like a musician as well?
Not
sure. I thought he was, but yeah,
it's
again such a crazy mind, but also like, you know, into the creative arts as well. So, but also like the most analytical, scientific mind as well. So again, just like
it's like
marrying the two.
Proof that, you know, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like there's a common ground somewhere.
Absolutely, completely agree. Yeah, super cool. Yeah,
and at least leave some freedom to at least, you know, be able to look at both views and to, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't just
for
dismiss one completely.
No, that's right. You know, but it's funny because I watched like the master class done by is Neil deGrasse Tyson. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so convincing. Like he's so convicted with everything. I'm like, when you get a guy like that, that's just his presentation is so, you know, is that bassy voice and everything he says. I'm like, you know, it kind of makes you feel I'm almost inferior. Like maybe he's right, but and it's funny because he very much makes sure to read a lot of anything like spiritual. He just happens to not agree with any of it, right? Because he's feels like he can disprove it with science. So I'm watching his master class, and yeah, it was interesting. It's kind of like the you know, growing up with my brother, he was very much like you have to be able to explain everything, right? So you know, yeah, it's different. So with him, I was like, okay, you know, I gotta rethink some things. But at the end of the day, afterwards, you know, after you kind of get away from it, you're like, nah, you know what? You believe what you believe. You know, it's kind of a knowing feeling, right? Like I think as humans, you know, you know what you know. I think, right? It's I'm curious. Like, are you guys into like? Do you guys do like meditation and stuff like that as well? Or
yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I could do more consistently. I usually nowadays, I mean, there's points where I do it religiously, but
nice.
there are certain times where I'm like, I only do it when I'm feeling turbulent, and I kind of want to get back to just doing it
at a
just
peaceful
because,
time.
regardless.
Yeah, that's funny, because it's kind of the same thing as like you know, when people talk about like prayer, it's often like when you're in a moment of not like you need something, but it's turbulence is well put the way you said it. That's when you're like, you know, but in fact, it's great if you can do it from a point of calm as well. So no, that's great. What do you guys find is sorry,
I was gonna ask earlier, you mentioned you extended you've been trying to meditate more for an hour. Like I've tried to look up like what people's perspective are, like what they're getting from 45-minute plus meditation versus like your 15-30 minute meditation. And some people say they feel different after 45 minutes to an hour in. So I was going to ask you, like, did you feel any different with the extended meditation?
Yeah, much different. Yeah, no, much different. I'd love to talk about it. So the first one that I did that was, I want to say about 45 to 50 minutes. I had a profound like mind shift change where I was like, okay, and then definitely came out of it a lot calmer. So what happened is, I'm not sure how it is for you guys, but I'm aware of it now, but I've always been very goal focused. So I'm always like, I want to be able to like, okay, this is done. And that's where I get a little bit of a dopamine hit. I'm like, okay, but then immediately the problem with that is what's next, right? You hit your goal. What's next, right? So it's this constant restlessness of, okay, I'm rushing to accomplish this goal. I'm not enjoying the process, right? And then as soon as I hit the goal, there's like a momentary, great. And then boom, okay, what's next? And it's just repeat. You kind of talked about the hamster wheel. I would view it sort of like that. It's just like one thing after another. And you're not getting enjoyment out of anything. So basically out of this meditation, I did it first thing in the morning because I have this morning routine. I do it like religiously. It's a workout. And I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna change it up. I'm gonna start by just, before I even grab my coffee, anything, I'm just gonna meditate. And the first 10 minutes were pretty rough because my thinking brain is like, oh yeah, and it's like, what are you doing? It starts talking. It starts like talking to me. It's like, what are you doing? You got so much to do. You got this to do. You're not working out yet. You're usually working out. And I'm like, I just took it. I took it, and it was right at about the 20-25 minute mark. I want to say it was like around halfway through. I finally had that what Eckhart Tolle talks about, where you can like actually separate yourself from your thoughts and observe it.
Yeah.
And I actually had that moment. I had that feeling. And to your point, gypC, like that was the difference. Extending it, I actually had a moment to remove myself from my thoughts and realize that my thinking brain is my thinking brain. That's not me. And it was kind of funny. I had some fun with it, and I'm just watching my brain lose its mind and go, get up. Meanwhile, my body is super relaxed. I'm deep breathing, and I'm kind of just having a little bit of fun with it. I'm just like, no, it's like, and then I had this like realization. I'm like, why am I always doing? Like, why is it so important to my identity to be this doer, this achiever? And I was like, well, okay, well, let my mind kind of keep chattering. Let's think about this for a little bit. So I thought about it, and I had this like, this phrase kept coming up, and it was like, be, don't do. Like, just be, just exist. Just, I'm breathing. I'm just be, don't do. And it was explore, don't achieve. And I was like, man, it was almost permission. I finally, after, here I'm 40 years old, I finally gave myself permission to just enjoy the process. Like, I always heard, the cute little phrase that people say, like, it's all about the journey, not the destination. And it resonated with me, but I didn't ever, it was one of these things I'd say, but I would never actually practice it. Right. So I finally had this like realization, with that separation that I had in that meditation, the separation from like, I guess my true me versus my blah, 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 the thinking brain. I was able to finally feel that, and really like, that was what my mantra was. The rest of the 20 minutes was like, be, don't do, and explore. Overachievement, explore, achieve, overachieve. And I wrote it down as soon as I was done. I wrote in my journal, and then I did a vlog about it, and just trying to explain like the epiphany that I had. And that's the thing. It's like, when you extend your meditation, you put yourself in a spot where you can have those realizations that it's almost the difference between like wet cement and then cement, that like you give it enough time to like actually become foundation. 10 minutes a day is great. It helps. Every little bit helps. 10 minutes a day it adds up to 61 hours by the end of the year. If you do 10 minutes a day, like it's definitely worthwhile. But yeah. And then after that first one, I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. I enjoy this. Though the thing that was the game changer for me was a blindfold, because I always try and like, I have a hard time. I'm such a visual person. So, soundproof, like earbuds. Because as soon as I hear a little bit of a sound or something, I kind of start sneaking a little look here. I got some dogs that are like, and then I'm kind of like watching what they're doing. So I'm so easily distracted visually. I had to just, as soon as I did the blindfold and the soundproof earbuds, good to go. So I've been doing that a couple times a day, very much enjoying it. I've been enjoying just letting my thoughts be my thoughts, just breathing, listening to that nice frequency music. And, I don't have as a profound as I did the one I just mentioned, but I always feel nice and calm and centered coming out of it. So yeah, highly recommend it if you guys try it. Now, those are my tips for things that work. Just a little more like sensory deprivation. Because if you're like me, it's like, it's so easy to be distracted. Even when you're trying to meditate, you're still like kind of looking around the room, or, I just have a hard time with it. So
yeah, I think I want to try those. I think my brother has one of those Apple headphones that like really cancels out the noise. And I was like, I gotta meditate with these.
Yeah, totally. Highly recommend
noise
that. Very
out
good.
here is a struggle.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you should definitely get those headphones. That'll help you. And then I don't know how to. Are you guys like visually easily distracted? I'm like,
visually,
I can do pretty decent. Yeah, as far as I can focus pretty good. Yeah.
That's
but
good.
before we get ready to close it out, is there anything links you'd like to share with the audience? I hear your cat, beautiful voice.
Yeah.
Hello.
That's her singing voice. Yeah.
I speak cat.
Yeah. It's like, she wants to hop in, I guess. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Like, really great meeting you, both of you. And again, apologies. So I'll say it on air. I apologize for being late. I was 15 minutes late, and you guys were just fantastic about it. So I'm turning red now. I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed, but thank you so much, guys. Great. I'd love to, later on down the road, be a guest or have you guys on my podcast. I'm taking a little bit of a break from it for now, but I'll definitely reach out. For me, if you guys want to check out any of my work and interact with me, by all means. So it's facebook.com, Matt Gardiner Coaching. So that's where I do a daily live show on the Facebook Live. And just myself and a couple of coaches get on there and just sort of riff on, a little bit of bite-sized kind of topics for the day, just pick something and kind of riff on it for 10, 15 minutes. And so it's kind of fun. Also, my coaching program that I've been doing is www.recoveryroadmap.me. And if you do .me/ebook, I actually just completed my first ebook that I put out. And it's basically my trials and tribulations with my own drinking. And that's sort of my hero's journey, getting through that. Sort of a book of confessional over my addiction and overcoming my addiction. And it also works as a accountability tool for me, because by coming clean and letting everybody know about it, now I'm committing to staying sober. Whereas before I was always a little bit ambiguous about it. So I feel very cathartic about releasing that. And if you want to find me on Twitter or Instagram, it's just Matt Gardiner 780. 780 is my area code up here in Edmonton, Canada. And yeah, that's where you can find me. There's links to my music and stuff on you'll be able to find that as well through those links. So,
and we'll have links below.
Yeah, that's
as well.
about it. Yeah, right on. Excellent.
Yeah. And if you're ever in Los Angeles, definitely hit us up and
I would
come
love
by
to,
for an in-studio recording.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, for sure. I haven't been down there. I've basically just been sheltered up here in Canada. But yeah, if I ever do, for sure, guys, I'd love to. And same thing. If you ever make your way up to northern Alberta, you always got a place for sure. Awesome.
Thank you to everybody that's been listening. Thank you again, Matt. It's been a great conversation, and I've learned a lot.
Thanks, guys.
And for the podcast, you can find us at AmericanGypsy.com. And we also have consistent self-improvement merch at luamlee.com.
And for music as well, I have links at Classic, KLACCIK, Carpenter, CARPENTA, and that's on Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, Apple Music, all major platforms, And thank you again to everyone listening for supporting, pressing like, commenting, subscribing, following. Check us out on Fanbase as well. New app for everyone. Consistent self-improvement to everybody, and peace.